Uh, this is not, it's just not normal, and it's not compatible with the norms of our democracy. And the sooner we wake up from this bad dream, the better.
So you're going to see in this debate between two heavyweights, Sam Harris lay out the terrifyingly accurate roadmap to where we are today with Trump's authoritarianism. The question is, who was right? If you're ready for the truth, hit those like and subscribe buttons. Don't forget to ring that notification bell so you never miss a video. Now let's watch this together, then I'll give my 2 cents at the end.
You've asked me essentially whether I think Trump is Orange Hitler, right? And I never have, and I've never taken those concerns entirely seriously. But I would point out that the leading scholars of fascism at this point, I mean, people like Robert Paxton, use the term in application to Trump, and it's not an empty epithet, right? It's not the same thing as saying that Trump is the next Hitler figure or the next Putin figure, right? I think the difference is that Trump is not ideological. You know, Trump is in the Trump business. Trump just wants wealth and fame, essentially, and he wants power in order to secure those things. But I think there are very few people who think he wants to create the 1,000-year Reich. I mean, he wants to build condos and play golf, right? I mean, we're talking about a game show host, right, who got marketed for 12 years on television as a brilliant businessman, and half the country bought it, right? A quarter of the country has rallied to him like he's the Messiah, and another quarter is willing just to look the other way as he desecrates the most basic norms of our democracy. And the most important one, which he's desecrated, is not committing to a peaceful transfer of power. I mean, that is, from my point of view, the only thing you need to know about him to decide your vote in this election is that as a sitting president, he did not commit and would not commit, and still hasn't committed, frankly, to a peaceful transfer of power. And we didn't have a peaceful transfer of power, right? And so that is, I mean, just again, to default to sane conservative Republican or erstwhile Republican principles, Ronald Reagan singled this feature of our democracy out as the key feature. I mean, it is the thing that made us the shining city on the hill, to use his terms. I mean, the thing that people living in shithole countries, to use Trump's terms, envy in us is this peaceful transfer of power. It is a political miracle. And Trump's campaign, his continued status in the Republican Party as their frontrunner, is just a continuous desecration of that principle. And so from my point of view, everything hinges on that. And no, I don't think assassination attempts are the right remedy for that. Voting against him is the right remedy for that. And the reason why things didn't normalize over the last 4 years is not because Joe Biden was so woke, or Kamala Harris is now a woke Manchurian candidate who will govern like a blue-haired activist from Barnard. No, it's that Trump is still in our politics, and we don't have a normal conservative party. I mean, this again, to come back to things that you and I agree about. You know, you and I could spend 2 hours here running down the far left and agreeing about, you know, just how bizarre the identitarian moral panic has been on the far left. But the problem with Trump and Trumpism is that it seems to justify all of that, right? It adds fuel to all of that, and the reason why the panic is justified, frankly, and again, it extends to Trump's former allies, right? It extends to his former running mate, Mike Pence. I mean, Mike Pence has said that the American people deserve to know that Donald Trump asked me to be loyal to him, to put my loyalty to him over my loyalty to the Constitution, right? That is political plutonium, right? And we should and the Republican Party should recognize it as such. But what we have in the Republican Party is, as I said, a cult of personality and a loyalty test. And you have people like J.D. Vance and even Elon Musk bending the knee in this loyalty test in the most abject way, asserting that they believe the big lie that he really won or might have won the 2020 election. And this is not, it's just not normal, and it's not compatible with the norms of our democracy. And the sooner we wake up from this bad dream, the better.
So again, you talk about the peaceful transition of power, which actually did happen because Donald Trump did leave office in January of 2021, and Joe Biden has been president mostly for the last 3.5 years, despite his mental ineptitude.
That was not.
Over the
you cannot call January 6th a peaceful transfer of power.
Well, that's not when the when the transfer of power happens, Sam. People don't leave office on January 6th. People leave office on January 20th.
If Mike Pence had obeyed him, we would have had a genuine constitutional crisis.
I agree with you, which is, I think, that why Mike Pence did the right thing. And I think that what Donald Trump, the argument that Donald Trump was making between November and January was morally and legally specious. But with that said, there was a peaceful transition of power.
But right now on the campaign trail, when Donald Trump is asked, and he was on Joe Rogan a few days ago, about the 2020 election, he still claims that he won the election. What do you make of that?
I mean, I obviously disagree with him. I don't think that he won the 2020 election. Also, this is part and parcel. I wish it weren't. But it is part and parcel of a reactionary divide that has plagued our politics since before Donald Trump, frankly. I mean, when Donald Trump won the election in 2016, we then spent 3.5 years of people claiming that Donald Trump was a Russian plant and had been bootstrapped into office by the Russians manipulating Facebook. This sort of election denialism is not. It is ugly. It is bad on both sides. It is. I won't even say that what Democrats
on both sides.
That's not true. I mean, it's not. If Donald Trump wins this election, I promise you will see election denialism on the left. That is incredibly similar to what you've seen from Donald Trump. I love that you said that.
I wanted to ask you that, and this is a question for you. I'm not going to filibuster, Ben. I just want to ask you, if on election day we have a clear result, right? So there's a landslide in the swing states, and someone really wins, right? If I told you that the losing candidate denied the results of the election and simply would not accept a loss, and even appealed to their most fanatical supporters to come into the streets and just obviously provoked violence on the part of the mob, right? And said, and when asked, what about the Constitution? This candidate said, to hell with the Constitution. We don't have a country anymore. Which candidate am I conceivably talking about?
Well, I mean, I think that, given Trump's rhetoric in 2020, obviously what you're talking about is Donald Trump. I don't think that's how it'd be phrased by Kamala Harris. I think that the way that it'd be phrased by Kamala Harris is more subtly.
That Kamala Harris, if she loses in a landslide, you think there's a chance that she will not accept the results of the election?
Forget about a landslide.
How about a close election? Into the streets?
How about a close election? Forget about a landslide, because a landslide
the landslide just makes it perfectly clear. I'm telling you that.
Why the necessity for that sort of clarity in an election that's 50-50? Why not actually pick a plausible scenario? The most plausible scenario is that she loses in a very tight election.
It's all too
and then
plausible.
she says there's been voter suppression, and then she
suggests. It's all too plausible. Ben, it's all too plausible because currently the chance that there will be a landslide in the swing states is about 40%, even though we're at 50-50 between the two candidates. According to Nate Silver, there's a 40% chance that one of them runs the table in the swing states, right? So it's
for sure that would be an electoral college landslide. We're not talking about a popular vote landslide in any case.
No, right. But, so I'm talking about a clear result, right? Where no allegations of fraud are plausible.
Okay, so the most obvious sort of rhetoric that would be used along those lines would be Trump's, and then the rhetoric that would be used on the other side if Trump wins would be that Trump has corrupted the system. The system has been so corrupted that people weren't able to vote properly in places like Georgia, which has been the claim that there was Jim Crow 2.0 in Georgia for years. There would be claims that Donald Trump was paid off by the billionaires, that there was foreign interference in the election. There would be all of these claims, right, and they would float around. Donald Trump this is my original claim, Sam, is that Donald Trump is very obvious in his excesses. Democrats and the Democratic Party and Kamala Harris are much more, I would say, much more subtle in their excesses. But those excesses are no less dangerous for being more subtle. In fact, in some ways, I think they are more dangerous for being more subtle.
Ben, you can't use a phrase like no less dangerous. Hillary Clinton conceded in 24 hours. That is less dangerous than this continuous provocation.
Sam, I just disagree with you. I think that the attempt by members of the media, by Hillary Clinton, who herself said that Donald Trump was illegitimately elected based on Russian interference in the 2016 election, was highly damaging.
How long did she say that for? How long did she say that for? Does she still say that?
I mean, she will. Yes, actually, she will still claim openly that there was manipulation that took place during that is true. That there was manipulation during the 2016 election.
She says the sane thing to say is that there is continuous foreign interference in our elections, right?
But that's always been the case.
That's the double standard, Sam. Now you're proposing a double standard.
When
Hillary says it, it's totally subtle and fine. And when Trump says it in the most obvious, foolish way, then it's totally different.
Ben,
Sam, go ahead.
You're just missing the relevant details here. almost everyone thinks that there is continuous foreign interference in our elections. Very few people at this point think that it has been decisive and that it was decisive in 2016. I mean, the problem in 2016, it was a much bigger problem, that the internal division was real, you know, and that whatever Russia tried to do on Facebook was amplifying very real divisions that exist in our society, which we should worry about. But I'm not in contact with any Democrats, and I talked to a lot of them at this point, who have burned any fuel over even weeks, much less months or years, worrying that Trump's first term was totally illegitimate because the election was hacked, and I mean, what really happened? I mean, there were things that seemed decisive that one could regret, like Comey opening the email investigation 10 days before the election, and that functioning as effectively as a kind of October surprise, right? I mean, nothing came of it, but it seemed decisive in terms of her poll results in those last weeks. But I mean, her loss was overdetermined, and most sane Democrats recognize that. What you do not have in the Democratic Party is a cult of personality around anyone and a series of loyalty tests. I mean, again, we're so far from the actual ground truth here. I mean, the ground truth is that we know at this point that there were Republicans in Congress, right, who would have voted to impeach Trump after January 6th, but they didn't because they were afraid for their lives. They were afraid that someone in the MAGA cult would come and kill them or members of their families, right? We know this from Mitt Romney, and we know it from Liz Cheney, too. This is not normal, and it's not happening on the Democratic side, right? This is a descent into, if you don't like the term fascism, something very much like fascism. I mean, I would say that this is fascism punching a gaping hole in our democracy, and it is the effect of Trump's demagoguery.
So,
his
Sam,
style of politics.
You're saying fascism is punching a gaping hole in our democracy, and this is solely due to Trump, and yet you also say that you would not support Kamala Harris if she, for example, stopped the certification of the election. And so my question remains, if Trump is such a grave threat to democracy, then why aren't you treating it that way? Voting isn't enough. I don't treat Kamala Harris as that sort of threat to democracy.
Well,
I think that Kamala Harris is a threat to many of the institutions.
I'm not going to burn down the village. I'm not going to burn down the democracy in order to save it, right? So I'm not in favor of political assassination.
But your argument is that it's ending under Trump. But your argument is that it's ending under Trump.
I can well imagine that our institutions are strong enough to weather a second Trump term, right? I don't think we're going to be. It's not going to be the Third Reich. And again, I don't think he has those kinds of aspirations because he's such a small figure in the end, right? He's not a man of ideas on any level. Right. So as far as I can tell, he believes almost nothing. But the crucial problem for me is that, he doesn't seem to recognize that we have an interest in the maintenance of world order. Right. I mean, he's a completely transactional figure. He cares about his relationships. Right. I mean, and I think he probably cares about his relationships to foreign leaders to a degree that could border on treason in certain circumstances. But I mean, it's just insane that we had a president in him who said he trusts Putin more than our own intelligence agencies, right? And then he shared top secret information with Kremlin officials in the White House because he just couldn't keep his mouth shut. I mean, he was literally just gossiping about intelligence secrets related to ISIS, and the Israeli intelligence went crazy over this, right? I mean, he's not a serious figure.
Well, can I respond to that one?
Yes, and then I'll jump in.
Because this one's actually kind of fascinating. So now we've shifted sort of topics into foreign policy and maintenance of world order and vision of the world. And this is the part where it seems rather incredible to me to support Kamala Harris as somebody who has a vision of a functional world order. The reality is that when we talk about Donald Trump, I think that in some bizarre ways, Trump and Harris are sort of photo negatives of one another, in the sense that Trump appears on the surface very unserious and he says a lot of bloviating and silly things, and then his foreign policy actually is rather serious. And Kamala Harris appears to sometimes, when she's not word salading, say serious things, and then her foreign policy is deeply unserious. So you'll have Donald Trump and he'll say stupid things or bad things, where he will say something about ISIS to the Russians,
or declassify top secret things in real time.
Or you could theoretically have the Biden-Harris administration staffed by people who full on leak Israeli intelligence plans in the middle of a war to the Iranian government, such that it is printed. You may have such an intelligence crisis, in fact, that the Israeli government stops sharing intelligence with the United States specifically because every time they do, it seems to be leaked to the front pages of the New York Times. You could have a foreign policy that is so deeply in hock to America's enemies that in the middle of an existential war in which Israel, for example, is fighting 7 different border wars from 7 different sources, you have the Biden-Harris administration slow-walking aid, threatening a cutoff in aid for supposedly humanitarian reasons, all while Kamala Harris seems signally unable to, for example, have a sister soldier moment with pro-Hamas supporters in her own party. Right? And then I'm supposed to feel that Donald Trump is the threat to world order. And the reality is that Ukraine was invaded under Kamala Harris and Joe Biden. It was not invaded under Donald Trump. Donald Trump, here's the thing about foreign policy that's really funny. Foreign policy is widely perceived as a game of nuance and complexity, when in reality, foreign policy is not all that complex and not all that nuanced. Very often it amounts to, if you cross this line, I'll punch you in the face, or I'll support people who do. And that actually is something that Donald Trump understood quite well, which is why he was able to achieve the best record in the Middle East of any president of my lifetime, while the pseudo-sophistication of the Biden-Harris administration has achieved the most massive conflagration in the Middle East in my lifetime.
Okay, well then I'll ask you a not nuanced question.
Sure.
It should be simple enough to answer. Who do you think Putin wants to win the election?
I don't know who Putin wants to win the election. I'll be honest with you.
You have no intuitions about this?
No. And the reason that I have no intuitions about this is because I don't think that Donald Trump knows his own policy on Ukraine. I don't think Putin does either. Donald Trump is wildly unpredictable about Ukraine.
I mean, as you know, Putin is behind much of the chaos. You could argue.
Sam, who does Iran want to win the election?
In the Middle East.
Iran has been actively intervening in the election on the side of Kamala Harris. We know this. The intelligence community has said this.
And there you have it. That's the sound of a prophecy being fulfilled. That wasn't just a debate. It was a time capsule from a saner world. And listening to it now, 10 months into the reality of a second Trump term, it's absolutely chilling. And let's be brutally honest, Sam Harris was right about everything. His warnings about Trump's desecration of the peaceful transfer of power, about the Republican Party becoming a cult of personality, about the descent into a fascism that punches a gaping hole in our democracy. That wasn't alarmism. It was a perfect and terrifyingly accurate prediction of the exact chaos and constitutional crises that Americans are facing every single day. And Ben Shapiro's arguments, they've aged like milk. His pathetic bad faith attempts to both sides the issue and create a false equivalency between Trump's authoritarianism and the Democratic Party look even more foolish and dishonest in hindsight. He wasn't just wrong, he was a willing accomplice to the very disaster Harris was warning him about. And this clip's the ultimate receipt. It's the definitive proof of who saw the threat clearly and who chose to be a useful idiot. So what do you think? Let me know in the comments below, and if you enjoyed this breakdown, make sure you hit that like and subscribe button, and don't forget to press the notification bell so you never miss a video. Thanks for watching.